Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. I want you to meet me on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Meet me there, like and share, meet me there, and the Santita Jackson at Friends page. Guess what? I'm on Blue Sky at santitajackson.bsky.social. And I'm still on X at Santita J. So let's get right to it, everybody. You know, since President Trump has gone into office, it's like we have whiplash. He has carried out his pet campaign promises and he has moved with lightning speed. And many of us have been disturbed by all of the things that he's been doing, but he said he was going to do it and he meant to do it and he didn't stutter. He didn't stop. Well, but we can't stutter. We can't stop. We should not be afraid. We should be encouraged, even as they've ended DEI. Now, that's the fruit, but the root and the branch, that's affirmative action. And the establishment have been going after affirmative action, which actually is a Republican created conservative remedy to offset the hundreds of years that Black people were held behind. Indeed, that is something that LBJ addressed when he signed the Voting Rights Act. He said, you all are not starting at the same place that white Americans are starting. And so by signing this act, first thing I want Negro leaders, what I want you to do is go home and teach your people to be citizens. Wow. Because without the vote, you can't really be a citizen. Remember the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment of the so-called slave amendments. You were freed from chattel slavery. You got your citizenship. And then you got the right to vote. Check out those steps, everybody. So what's going on here, everybody? What's going on as we talk about reparations? We have all been raised on the American, really it's mythology, that immigrants built this nation. That is no offense to anyone. I think that everyone has done something to contribute to this country. None more so than indigenous Americans because this is their land. But in order for the land to be cultivated, in order for the country to be built, they brought in enslaved Africans. We did not work for free, we were unpaid. There's a difference. We did not work for free, we were unpaid. That is the foundation upon which America became the economic superpower, the likes of which the world has never seen, because they were on land that they did not pay for, and it was built by laborers whom they did not pay. Remember, the White House has been built and rebuilt. It's been built twice by enslaved labor each time. Think about that. So the question is, what are Blacks owed? And particularly now when we're being told by the White House, Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, Empowerment Temple, I met you down in Tulsa years ago and we're just so excited about your growing ministry. Of course, the Great Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, Maryland. And of course, reparations. This is something that you studied. It's something that you have been pushing for. This is from the whitehouse.gov, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. You and I both went to school. We both know that you're not eligible for DEI, let alone an affirmative action program, unless you meet the basic qualifications. Not so with your legacy. But let's talk about reparations because Black Americans are at a critical point. The Institute for Policy Studies says that by 2053, if conditions do not change, the Black family will have a median wealth of zero. Zero. How do we build a country and have nothing to show for it? How is it that Black families as of 2020 had less than 1/10 of the median wealth of white families? Certainly it's not because we don't work hard, Reverend Dr. Turner. Something has to be going on. And so when they throw out DEI, and when you have the new Secretary of War, the Pentagon, when he says he's tired of woke policies, he doesn't want DEI, all this stuff. You tell me, how do you make the case for reparations at this time when there's such tremendous pushback? We're about to see, according to Dr. Algernon Austin from the Center for Economic Policy and Research, maybe 100,000 Black families alone, Black people will lose their jobs. Now, this new executive order will empower government to go after private industry, corporate America. Yeah, they're in the crosshairs because now the government wants to know how you've hired, who you've hired. If it looks too diverse, you got to let some people go. Okay, I'm sitting back because I just want to know. I saw you on this powerful podcast with your predecessor at Empowerment Temple, the anointed, just as you are, Pastor Jamal Bryant. You got to help me with this one. I mean, how do you make the case? And how do you make the case? First, how do you make it to white people? And then how do you make it to Black people? Because there's some Black folks who say, for example, I'm not a DEI hire after we fought for DEI. I'm not an affirmative action baby. After we fought for affirmative action, I'm like, are you kidding? Of course you are. How do you make the case?
Yeah, so first of all, always a blessing and pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you.
My soul's delight to be in your midst. Always a blessing to be near any Jackson, but especially Miss Santita Jackson. But how to make sense of all of this and why even now reparations should still be something that's pushed and fought for. Because you should never allow your enemy to make your agenda. That's case in point number one. Because to do that is to become reactionary. And we have a terrible history of doing that. How do we make reparations front and center in a country that just has, by edict of the president and executive order, to dismantle and discard all DEI programs? The same way a mentor of your father and a hero of America, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, in the height of segregation in the South, while Black men and women were being lynched, had the audacity in the city of Montgomery to tell Black folks, we're not riding these buses. At the same time, they were lynching Black people.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it was against the law for us to go to school with these white folks. We are doubling down. We're setting our own agenda, saying y'all can do what y'all want, but we're gonna shop what we please. And instead of shopping and riding on your buses, we're gonna walk. Right? So y'all can play these games if you want to, but we are tired of being the only ones who are hurting. So that's one way. Is we should not allow our opposition, or those who never have been for us, to set our agenda and tell us when we should advocate for things that we know are right. And in addition to that, reparations is so much more than DEI anyway, right? DEI was a response to the work of folks like Dr. King with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And it at first was supposed to focus primarily on Black people, but that lasted maybe a couple of months, because in 1970s the focus became women, particularly white women, right? As was the case with affirmative action. So we should not allow the narrative to be shaped by our opposition that states DEI is something that has benefited solely Black people, right? Because we've had DEI since the late 60s, early 70s, And we still don't see the improvement in Black representation at the executive level that we should. And those who benefited from it the most have been white women. And that's just facts.
But I mean, that is also given some Black people, should I say, they have taken the space and they've said, okay, this benefits Black women, so I don't know how DEI is my fight. I don't know how affirmative action is my fight. What do you say to them? I mean, because your book, after all, says creating a culture of
yes, you took that.
it's,
That's my answer. Yeah.
I mean, I need you to help us with that because to me, it seems that we have to have a cultural shift. You know, when you and I have been talking about you coming on the show regularly, and you are doing that because the culture has to shift.
Yes.
We have to shift the culture. You know, we fight for affirmative action, then we're ashamed of it.
Yeah.
We fight for DEI. Oh, I'm not a DEI hire. They didn't hire me just because I'm Black. Well, they didn't hire you because you were Black. So which is it? I mean,
The problem was that we were always qualified. We were never really notified. They never noticed us. DEI affirmative action programs help them at least take a look at us to be noticed for the job that we already qualified for. In fact, I just saw a recent study how Black women are some of the most educated folks of any demographic in America.
absolutely.
You know, but still don't get the same amount of pay, equal pay to their counterparts. And your Black women are more often than not the most qualified, the most educated people in any workspace. Black women are the most educated folks in any workplace. Black women are, but they're not the most but they're not the highest paid people in the workplace. So this DEI helps, and affirmative action helped them look at us. But once they looked at us, it's good to be noticed. It's great to get the job, and it's great to get paid what you're due. So that's why we should still advocate for it, but we should let the people know that this is still not something that put us over the top. It's really white America's way of helping out their daughters. But even still, and the thing I love about my people and Black folks in particular is that we don't mind other folks coming up. We are not like racist, insecure white supremacists. We don't mind seeing Spanish speaking women. We don't mind anybody being successful in life. The problem is other groups seem to mind us coming up. You know, we've always been the more benevolent ones. So I would like to, and I still do support DEI. I support affirmative action because, as you stated, it creates this culture that gets us the necessary attention we need for jobs that we already qualify for, in order that we might have a better chance in getting those positions.
But why do we push back against it? I mean, why do we say, affirmative action, DEI, they open the door, they give you a seat at the table, they take you off the menu.
Yeah.
And yet we push back and we angrily tell people, well, I wasn't hired because I'm Black. I'm like, yeah, you were. That was a factor. There are lots of factors in everything. Why is it that it seems like we're ashamed, Reverend Dr. Kemp?
Because Black people have because I've seen it in my own family. People, we actually are the ones who qualify for government services, but we oftentimes don't take it because we don't want to be seen as living off the government.
Yeah.
I've seen that in my personal family, right? My grandmother, God bless her soul, qualified for government assistance, but she never wanted to take it.
Oh, yeah.
Because she didn't want to be munching off the government. Because that's the narrative, that's the stereotype of Black women with children. My grandmother was a Black woman with children in the South. So to not fall into a stereotype, we do just the opposite. We put more pressure and burden on ourselves because we try to defy the odds, even though still they put those stereotypes on us. We play by the rules, even though the game is rigged, while other folks who don't even qualify for the benefits, they're the ones who getting them. And so, and so today, the folks who benefit the most from what we call welfare programs are white women. And the folks who really need it don't even really apply for it. I'm saying from personal experience, don't even apply for it because they don't want to be seen as munching out the government.
But everybody else, they get the assistance and they don't feel in any way diminished. I mean,
No,
my question said that's stigmatization. Okay, because when you're creating the culture of repair, to me, you got to deal with that too, right?
Yes. And when I was in Oklahoma, they had this, and the tribes have benefits, right? And you obviously will see very, very fair-skinned white people saying that they're Native Indigenous Americans. And at the time, it was legal. And at the time, I learned from people who were in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area and who were historians that white folks at the time of the land disbursement and the classifications, the Dawes rolls, they could pay $5 and be called an Indigenous American. So they called them $5 Indians. They look as white as sheet paper, but they quote unquote indigenous, and they got the benefits, and they own these folks' rolls, right? Meanwhile, the actual enslaved people who helped build the tribes can't even get the same benefits, which is the most baffling thing because those folks look more like you and I. And so folks who don't qualify, folks who really don't deserve the benefits are the ones who are getting the benefits. Same thing we saw with the welfare program in Mississippi with Brett Favre and with his daughter. That I think Southern Miss getting the money for from the welfare block grants that was designed to go to poor families in Mississippi. But they went to go build a wing on to his daughter's, I think it was volleyball program. Like the insane Poverty by America. Matthew Desmond talks about it intimately in his book of how money for poor people has been co-opted by the folks who not only do they not need it, they are the rich. And so it's the rich folks who are benefiting off poverty programs. And the poor people who qualify for it got too much pride that they don't want to be stigmatized as saying that they are getting these sort of assistance.
How do we get people out of that?
Yeah, I think that
I mean, and particularly Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, senior pastor at the Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, Maryland. I need to know an author of Creating a Culture of Repair. Whew. Particularly as you have all of these people, not all, but so many well-regarded people, certainly well-regarded by the establishment, really trying to beat this sense of entitlement out of Black people. One thing that white people do have is a sense of entitlement.
Yes.
And one thing we don't have is that.
That's right.
So
I think it's because white America feels really in their heart of hearts that this is their country. And Black people, we still feel like guests.
Okay.
And so when you are a guest in someone's house, you don't just open the fridge. You don't just sit on the couch. You don't just park your car in the garage. Even though we built this house, right? We still cutting the grass of the house. We still paying the mortgage of the house. We still feel like visitors of the house, but white America feels like they actually it's their house. The house is for them. They'll tell you this land is our land. This is my land. They used to have songs about this type of stuff, and so that pathology has seeped in and passed down through generations. Where Black people, we feel like, yes. Case in point, during my walk to DC this past Monday, I'm walking
Tell
with
me
the
about
reparations now sign
that.
in below freezing weather. White man walks by me and tells me go back where I came from. Yeah, I'm born and raised in America. Born and raised in Tuskegee, Alabama. But he told me I need to go back to Africa.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, because in their eyes, this is their country. We're visitors. We're guests. And it's okay for other white folks to come. So it's okay for the Ukrainians to come, right? It's okay for them to come, but not everybody else who comes from Haiti or from Mexico. ICE has to come and deport them immediately, right? So it's okay for fair-skinned folks to come as much as and as often as they would like. But when darker skinned people, melanin rich people come, oh, we gotta go and deport them tonight. Go to their schools, go to their churches, go to their houses, and deport them tonight. Because in their eyes, this is not our country. Even though we fought in every war, first person died for this country. This is not our. This is their country. And so to correct that in creating this culture of repair, white America, and they wonder why we put African American before our name, because we're treated like we are not from here. You know, why can't we just be American? That's what they say. But they know good and well they don't treat us like Americans. They treat us like we're visitors.
I mean, not to mention the fact that they stay very tied to their places of origin.
All day.
You get on a plane and you go to an African country as a black person. Number one, you're gonna be the only black person on the plane. That part.
Yeah.
And then at some point, whenever they would see or hear that Reverend Jesse Jackson got on the plane, a chill would wash over the plane. What does he want? Why? What is he? I mean, I've been asked that so many times. Well, why are you going? I'm going home. Oh, you can't be going home. That's not your home. You don't. What do you mean I don't look? No. We gave. Of course, I look African. What? 400 years later, this is what you come up with. All right, I got it. But I'm unmistakably black. So what are you talking about? But this is kind of where we are, and that's why I'm saying, when your book, I mean, creating a culture of repair, you got to do both at the same time.
Yes. We have to instill in our people that we belong here.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is our house. Too. It's not only our house, but we don't mind sharing a house, right? But we have to also tell our other melanin deficient brothers and sisters that it's okay when you have a house this large and a land this rich to share with other people, right?
Unbelievable.
Also in the house before you got here, by the way, and we have to really it takes, and I heard Toni Morrison speak on this. It takes a demented individual to only define themselves by being greater than other folks. And I'm paraphrasing. And that's the fallacy of what's one of the many fallacies of white supremacy is it's always having the adherent hold themselves higher than other folks. And their self-worth comes not in their own being. Their self-worth comes from them being over somebody else. So I have to come into the room saying, well, I'm 6'6", right? It's like me coming into a room saying, y'all a bunch of midgets. I'm talking to everybody else. Right? Like, why have to state that? First of all, don't state the obvious. So if you do think that you're better than folks, why should you have to state it? And why should you have to cut them down? So what white supremacy does, what racism does, the inaction of the activation of white supremacy, it cuts people down at the knee to keep them shorter than somebody else. That's what Jim Crow did. That's what mass incarceration does. You in order for you to be taller, because you're not naturally taller, so there is no real thing of racial superiority. But to have that be manifested, you have to cut folks down at the knees so that you can be taller than them. And racism is the practice of white supremacy. And that's what we have seen for over 400 years in this country cuts folk down at the knees so that one group can still stand taller than the other.
So what does yeah, because I mean you have giants in holes
Yep.
and you have little people on stilts.
My
I'm like,
Lord.
you're still a
You better
little
preach.
person. No, I mean I'm like you on a hole, honey, and you're on stilts. Something about this is off,
That's right.
And
That's right.
so my question for you then is what do reparations look like?
Yeah.
I mean, especially now when people are telling the White House,
Lord have mercy.
I pulled it from ending illegal discrimination. You can't make this up. And restoring marriage based opportunity. I remember, as you answer this question, Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, Pastor, I remember when George W. Bush, President George W. Bush, who, to fully disclose, I've met him several times. He is a really nice guy and big fun. Do I agree with a lot of his politics? No, but that's never been that. You separate.
Yeah.
You separate those things out. You've had that experience too.
Yeah.
You meet these folks and you're
No,
like, good people,
yeah.
and he is a really nice guy, big fun. And I remember when he went and got an honorary degree from Yale,
Mm.
which is his family school. He went to school there, and he's so refreshingly honest. He said, "I don't even know how I got in here," and he said that on the mic. I hollered. I said, "Oh no, he didn't." He said, "I don't know, but okay, and I'll take it, but I don't even know how I got in." And everybody laughed because it was clear that he got in because he was legacy.
Yeah.
The affirmative action, I am qualified. That's the baseline. If I don't have a certain test score, certain grades, I cannot even come in under an affirmative action policy. So, as a descendant of people who were enslaved, who were not paid for the work we've done, we'd do something and they should have paid the Japanese for being interred during the Second World War. Are you kidding me?
Right.
These people were pulled out of their homes. They got to their homes. Their homes have been overtaken by other people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really. So, oh yeah, no, they deserve that and more.
Yes.
And indigenous people, let's not even get started there.
Yes.
They
all their land.
Oh my gosh. So I mean,
all their land.
Oh, absolutely. So, and I see black people who are descendant of those who were enslaved and built the country.
Yes.
I see us in similar circumstances.
Yes.
But now we're the only people in America who are told to shut up and say nothing. I mean, just shut up. We don't want to talk about that. You're playing the race card. Are you serious right now?
Exactly.
So, I mean, how do you make this case right now when there's so much hostility? I don't know any other way to put it.
I think there's twofold. I think, as I stated earlier, you still fight and press your claim to the government nationally, but I think also in states such as Maryland, states such as Illinois, where there is a sizable number of conscientious people, black and white, who support the issue of repair. I think you press your claim. In fact, I will be in Illinois tomorrow for that very issue of their bill that is being presented. Maryland, we are looking at some sort of statewide reparation commission, and all throughout the country. I focus on the capital because I walk to the capital. I'm proximate to the nation's capital, but we have to still fight everywhere. But especially now, we know we probably won't have as much traction in DC. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna stop walking, because I still believe and trust in God. But the movement should be, and is already becoming nationalized, that it will have a full effect across the nation. So that's one thing. We have to be strategic in that we know the areas, as they say in politics, you have to be able to count your votes. And in states and in counties, even in cities where we have a larger number of folks who are sensible to the call and the need of America doing repair. Because as I stated in my book, reparations, black folks don't necessarily need it; they deserve it. America needs it for her soul, because this country's soul is bankrupt right now. But while doing that, while fighting into the government and fighting legislatively, one of the things I preached about this morning, we also must seek to repair ourselves, and to do that by empowering our minds, since we know that they are waging war against, as they call, woke theory or critical race theory or DEI programs. We know now there will be a depth of programs that will teach our children true history, not just black history, but true history. And in fact, I just read that this president has just told the federal agencies that they are to not observe Black History Month. Like, what kind of sense does that make? So in schools, in integrated schools, where blacks may make up 40-50% of the population, they already probably weren't getting much Black history programming anyway. Now, it's no incentive, it's no need for the school system to do that at all. Like, case in point, personal example, my boys went to a school in Baltimore County last year, majority white school. There was no major Black history program at all at the school. There was no national assembly, there was no school-wide assembly at all for the whole school in the month of February. Now, it's going to be even less recognition of Black achievement and Black accomplishment. So what does that mean we should do? Should we just allow that to go on and not educate our children or ourselves? No, we must do as our grandparents did when they had no support from the government. They educated themselves. This situation right here is putting us more in line with our ancestors and their treatment than anything else ever before. And so I try to see the silver lining, which is we can now, and we should have always done this, been teaching ourselves, educating ourselves, repairing ourselves, because we should not have ever expected anybody else to do it. And now we can't expect anybody else to do it.
But isn't that a good thing? I mean,
I think it's a great thing.
Because didn't Carter G. Woodson tell us that miseducation of the Negro, that you don't hand your children over to the oppressor for them to get taught? And I mean, and what about our Jewish brothers and sisters? They have Hebrew school, Reverend Dr. Church. I mean, they don't let anyone else teach them their history but them.
Yeah, we are the only ones, and I've been Black all my life, and I love Black people, but Black people are the only ones who expect their adversaries to teach their children and do right by them, by the way.
But how? I mean, because I'm saying that doesn't
no, it doesn't work.
Make sense to me.
And that's why we have a generation now that I never forget. I was getting a rental car when your father was coming to visit, and I was talking to the worker there, young brother. I said, "Yeah, we got Jesse Jackson coming to the church," and he was like, "Jesse, who?" I said, "You don't know?"
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, what are y'all learning in school? Like, what are y'all watching?
Well, what are your parents telling you?
That's right. That's right.
Because I think that's part of what. And see, I'm not talking about my father now. I remember in 1981, 13 years after Dr. King had been killed, more than half of the students at Boston University, their entering class, did not know who Dr. King was. I'll never forget that.
Hold up. Hold up. Rewind.
Yeah.
1981. That's the year before I was born. King hadn't been dead 20 years.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And he went to BU.
And he went to BU. Man, Coretta up there. And they didn't know. Hold up. You said they didn't know who he was? I didn't know who he died.
They didn't know who he was.
Lord have mercy.
But that's what I'm saying. And so what does the church do?
Oh my.
I mean, because I'm saying our church has to do something more than be open on Sundays.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. So yes, we just like an hour ago, maybe plus or minus, we're talking about our summer programming. And now with all this DEI cancellation, maybe even a spring break program to help educate our children, because this, what if we are not careful, if we're not careful, just like Donald Trump had his inauguration on Dr. King Day, our children are going to think that Dr. King Day is just the day the president gets inaugurated. It's the inauguration day.
But only God would have that, because they said it was the third Monday in January. Okay. And if you look at the King statue, the King monument in Washington, he is looking sternly, as you know, on the mall. And so he is looking sternly on King Day, because that's when they're inaugurated. They're inaugurated on the day that you have to say, you can't be a president and not mention Dr. King's name.
That's right.
Look at the Lord. Look.
Period.
Come on, so fine, man. Because guess what? The only recognition the acknowledgement that you have of Dr. King in the Capitol is in the rotunda where Donald Trump was sworn in. It's a little bust as you go into Statuary Hall. It's his head, but he's there.
My.
So you can't get past it. So my question is for you. I mean, as you work out this curriculum, and I think it has to be something we have to expand. It should be a weekly thing.
Yeah.
We've got to spread it so it's just something that our children do all the time. I mean, something that we teach them, because that to me that's the culture of repair. That's where the repair, when you really understand that you invented the stoplight.
Yes.
That this whole computer age is because of you. GPS.
Yes.
This is you. Wait a minute. I told a young man, an Uber driver, that it was Memorial Day weekend. And I was asking him what he was doing, and he was a wonderful young man. And he said, well, my niece and my daughter, it's their birthday. So, you know, they were born at the same time. So the family has a big party, and I'm so excited because my daughter wants this, my niece wants that. And it's just, he said, so as soon as I'm done with you, I got to go. So I said, bottom line, I asked him, do you know Memorial Day was created by Black people? I said, happy Memorial Day. He said, okay. I said, did you know, by the way, did you know it was created by Black people? And he stopped, Reverend Dr. Turner. He said, are you serious? I said, yes. They had taken the soldiers from the Civil War.
That's right.
And they took the Union soldiers and just dumped them in the graves, in mass graves, and without any honor. The Black people who were newly freed saw that, dug them up, and buried them individually, and memorialized them. We did that. He said, he almost started to cry. He said, I've got to tell my babies that. I didn't know. I said, oh, wow. You didn't know Mother's Day was Mother's Day for Peace then, did you? He said, I said, yeah, after the Civil War, mothers were so sickened by the blood and the carnage that they said, we've got to stop war. So we declared Mother's Day for peace. I mean, there is so much, but we're the ones who have to tell the story.
That's right.
And so I'm saying, what is your, I mean, I know you're still working through the curriculum, but number one, how is it being received, and what is it going to kind of sort of look like?
Yeah, I how it will be received. I hope that the parents sign the children up for it, because it's not really so much for us, it's for the future. If we do not pass our story down, um, we may we as a people, this right now, our black colleges, universities are suffering, our black churches are suffering, our black businesses are suffering. If we don't instill a sense of solidarity and unity in and amongst ourselves, it's not so much just to boycott a store anymore. We have to buy into our own stores, right? You know, instead of buying into white folks' stores, white owned stores, you know, because we just so happy that they, you know, keeping DEI officers, we need to be buying into our own stores. And so I salute Costco. I'm supportive of that. But if we don't support our own businesses, if we're not careful, the only thing we're going to have left are funeral homes and a few churches and major black schools. I say major because the ones who are not like major with enrollment, they are barely in existence right now. So that's going to be my pitch and spiel to the parents to sign their children up. If we don't support us, this may be the last generation that you have choice to support us. To be straight up.
Creating a culture of repair. You got to get the book. We're talking with Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, Maryland. He's a preaching machine, so prophetic. And one of the things I know that gave my father, Reverend Jesse Jackson, so much comfort when he met this young man was that he saw someone who was willing to do that which was unpopular. See, what people don't realize is that people come to my father now and they with big eyes and they say, "Oh, what was it like to work for Dr. King?" My father said, "The line wasn't long." No, not too many people wanted to work for him because my parents went to work for him when he was becoming his most unpopular. In late 64, 1965. And so, and then, when my father went to work for him full time, Dr. King had barely 2 more years to live. But he said, you've got to come work for me. And he was very urgent. You must do it now because where you're going, it's a very specialized ministry. And I can teach you more about theology than you can ever learn in that seminary. You need to come and work for me. There's things I want to show you. And my father just kept on with the assignment. Dr. King has been called the architect, Reverend has been called the builder. And you are in that tradition. And so what I want to find out from you, because Laura Bell says you've got a clear mind. And the thing is, you're unapologetic. And thank you for that. And so I need to know, just because there is now more than ever, Reverend Dr. Turner, we need restoration. We need repair.
Yeah, we do.
Because anytime we're looking at, we recoil in horror at being called an affirmative action baby after all that went into getting the program. I'm not a DEI, and I heard this young man, bless his heart, and he meant well. He's the head of the Black Law Students Association at Harvard. And he said, well, there's something called the Black spokesperson syndrome, and we don't want to fall into that. And I was like, oh my gosh. But why else do you think you're there?
Exactly.
What's wrong with being a spokesman for your people? In fact, that's what you're supposed to do.
That's right.
My Jewish friends feel that way.
Yeah.
My Italian friends, oh boy, you want to get them warm? Talk about Columbus, the lost explorer who thought he was somewhere that he was not and gave everybody the wrong name. I'm proud of him. So you got to talk to me. Help me with this one. I mean, because I'm trying to find out where we begin here.
Yeah.
Because you got everybody telling us what we're not and what we're not.
I really believe that and I said this, I've been saying this now for a few years since I was in Tulsa. Um, Black people are not exempt from the effects of white supremacy. And we feel that we have, oftentimes we don't say it like this, but that example of that Harvard student is another case in point.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we feel we have to apologize for being Black. And we don't want to, we want everything else to be seen. We want our intellect, we want our athletic prowess, we want our talents to be seen. But we act as though our Blackness is a badge of shame.
Yeah.
So we don't want anybody to ever misconstrue us for a DEI hire or an affirmative action applicant, because that then denotes that I'm Black, and I may have a different experience that sets me apart that's based on the color of my skin. So we try to minimize that. We don't mind claiming any other privilege, right? We don't mind. I don't mind being known as being tall. I don't mind being known as being whatever. But for some of us, when you mention that you're Black, we sound like white folks. When you mentioned you're African American, we sound like white folks say, "I'm just American." No, but you African American too, right? You can be proud to be an American, but don't forget your ancestry. So I think that is because we've been taught that Blackness is a badge of shame.
Mm-hmm.
We've been taught that Blackness is something to be feared and to have as a liability versus being an asset. We try to keep that from being noticed, or that from being used as something that has us stand out, which I think is unfortunate because, James Brown tried to help us, saying Black and I'm proud. We tried to help us saying Black is beautiful, Stokely tried to help us, but we just, Fred Hammond tried to help us too with Black Power, but and those were all messengers. Your dad tried to help us saying I am somebody, but every generation has to have somebody that speaks to not just Black people, but speak to the Blackness of Black people. To say, you know what? You are a fine Black sister. And you ain't fine in spite of being Black. You fine because you Black. You are a smart Black brother. And you ain't just a smart Black brother. You are a Black brother who is smart. And that's something that we should celebrate. And in fact, being Black and the experiences that we've gone through, you have to be smarter than the most just to get in the room. So when I say you a smart Black brother, I'm not saying you smart. You smart. You smart for being a Black person. Are you smart for just that? No, you are smart because of everything you've gone through. You got to be smarter than most folks.
Got to be.
You have to be stronger because of everything you have to carry as a Black woman, as a Black man, as a Black child, right? You have to be strong mentally and physically. So instead of it being a badge of shame, every generation has to have somebody who speaks to the Blackness of Black people, for them to see that it's not something to be ashamed of, but really something to be proud of.
Absolutely. And we've got to get there because I remember Russell Crowe when he got his Oscar. He said he dedicated it to dedicated it to anyone born or living on the downside of advantage.
Mm.
And that stayed with me because I think that this can help everybody.
Yes.
Because I remember the awful things that people used to say about Bill Clinton, you know, calling him garbage and things like that, which I was like, are you serious right now? I mean, how are you going to call any human being garbage? I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
But that's what they did. And they treated him that way, which is, I think, why he had such an affinity on many levels for the Black experience because of the way the white power structure, the white upper classes treated him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that, once we do right by the least of these, things will change for the country. And just help me with that. I mean, as we go, because we are a week away from the inauguration of Donald Trump, and we're still living.
Yeah.
He's been moving with a quickness, and I think all of that, Reverend Dr. Turner has been to really almost make us lose confidence.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and so and lose faith and just say, this is so overwhelming, there's nothing we can do. And I don't believe that. I believe the opposite. So if you could help us to give us a word, please, because I think that I know that people are really struggling right now, and they need encouragement. I mean, tell us very quickly about your walk from Baltimore to Washington and why you did it, and just give us a word because we need that. I mean, we need to create a culture of repair now more than ever. Now more than ever, as people are telling us that as hard as we've worked, that we don't deserve our jobs. I'm wondering what's going to happen to some people who are on the verge of retirement. Will this kill their pensions?
Mm.
I mean, what about people in their homes?
Mm.
What about people who are in their late 50s, early 60s? How can they get another job? I mean, this is cruel.
And another thing that I hope it is, because I know God will take care of us.
Yeah.
Um, I saw that Monday, and I get back to my walk when I finish answering your question. Um, we our experience in this nation has been one of bouncing back. Nobody bounces back harder than Black folks. We think Michael Jordan is the only one with ups. No, Black people as a whole have ups. We got some leaping ability to be able to bounce back. I mean, that's what we do. And the thing I like about it is I preached this a while ago with the basketball. Still using the Michael Jordan analogy with the basketball. The harder you throw it down, the higher the ball goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
in this example, the heart of this nation, the heart of this country, the heart of that Trump and Trumpsters try to throw us down, it only means the higher we are going to rise. And trust and believe we will rise.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't come this far to just stop now. Um, um, but when we rise again, 4 years gonna go by quicker than we know it. I hope and pray, even though January has been very long. Um, I hope that we remember this moment. The reason that we got DEI and affirmative action was because folks were marching in the street to get the Civil Rights Act passed. The reason why we have Black executives is because somebody went in and had to have the tough conversation. They had to put their job on the line to file an EEOC complaint. They had to put their livelihood on hold to see about not just them, but their people.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hoping that what we do right now is that we take this time that Black people in authority, you realize that nothing is promised to you. You realize that tomorrow is not promised to you. and that as the generation did beforehand that got you your VP position, that got you your director's position, what are you willing to do for the next generation to make sure you're not just the first and the last black in that position? And secondly, what as far as the walk goes, that's why I do what I do every month, every single month now for 28 times, 28 months in a row. 28 months in a row, I have walked over 40 miles for reparations. And this most recent walk was on one of the coldest Martin Luther King days in recorded history. All of my walk was in below freezing weather. I started at 2:30 a.m. in the morning. They had canceled parades. They had canceled, of course, the president's inaugural address being outdoors. They had canceled everything that was outdoors, marches, protests, all of that. But I still walked. And waking up at about 12:30, making it to the church to get my stuff together around 1:30, going to Carroll Park and leaving there at about 2:30, 2:45, and not stopping until I made it to my destination. And then when I get to DC, to see all the barricades, the blocking the streets. And then on top of that, my phone battery dies. So I'm in the middle of this Trump country with folks shouting and yelling obscenities toward me. And I got no cell phone. I got nothing but my reparations now signed and my wreath of 400 roses. That's all I had. And when I tell you that I'm the only black person in a sea of white, not just white people, but white Trump supporters, right? It was the whole verse of, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death has new and greater meaning for me now. And the physical exasperation of having walked by that point over 40 plus miles. And I'm from Alabama, so I am not used to cold weather at all. My feet were cold. My feet were kind of warm, but my fingers were cold. My feet were sore. Back was sore. But God carried me. God carried me. God carried me. Got a chance to meet with Brother Garrison Hayes with Mother Jones.
Yes.
And to tell the story. He interviewed me about my experience, so that should be coming out later. But just to have that be done on Dr. King's day, then finally making it to the King Memorial to pray and to just be in that space with all that entails. It was truly an inspiring experience that I will never soon forget, and one that I use as an example of it took me my whole day. It took me about 15, 16 hours to do the walk. And yes, I have plenty I could be doing besides that. But I felt called to it. I felt there was a cause, reparations. I felt called to that cause, and I felt the conviction for doing what I felt God called me to do. And next month I'll do it again, Lord's willing, on President's Day. And I would go to the White House again. I went under Biden. I'll be going under Trump. I know the Proud Boys have been there already this week. I don't know what I will encounter, but I know God will be with me.
Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, the Empowerment Temple of Baltimore, Maryland, creating a culture of repair. You've got to get the book. You've got to hear and preach. And this is why our leadership has come from the church, because it's uncompromised. It's uncompromising. And I thank you for your voice, but more than that, I thank you for your example. And I thank you for, as Darius Brooks, our mutual friend, Pastor Darius Brooks wrote, thank you for being available. God, thank you for that. And I can't wait to have you back And another week or so, because we got a lot to talk about, because we've got to continue to watch this, what's happening here. Because the Institute for Policy Studies says that the Black family, if current trends continue, will have a net wealth of zero.
My Lord.
That's something to march about, everybody.
Yes, it is.
Our children don't know, if they don't know who Dr. King is, they don't know who they are.
My
If
God.
they don't know Frederick Douglass, they don't know who they are. If they don't
My.
know Denmark Vesey, if
Mm-hmm.
they don't know Nat Turner, if
Mm-hmm.
they don't know Sojourner Truth,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't know Phyllis Wheatley, if they don't know, if they don't know, if they don't know, if they don't understand the circumstances of Sally Hemings,
My.
if they don't know, if they don't know, then they don't know who we are and why we're here. And so I want to thank you with all of my heart for all that you're doing. May God continue to bless you and your beautiful wife and children.
Mm.
May God continue to bless you. Know that you have a home here on the Santita Jackson Show. Miss
Thank
Wanda from North Carolina said, thank you. Because we need that. We need an unadulterated gospel. And I thank you for that. Thank you for that.
blessings. Blessings.
God
My
bless you.
pleasure always.
Amen. AM
Amen.
950 Radio, everybody, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita Jackson. God bless you, everybody.